Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 3, check, check. Check, 1, 2, check. Checking. Check, check, 1, 2, 3, check. Testing, check, 1, 2, check. Check, check, check.
Yeah.
Check, check, 1, 2, 3, check. Check, check. Check, 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 1, 2, 3, check. Testing, check, 1, 2. Check, check. Check, 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 1, 2, 3, check, test.
Test. Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Does it work? Yes. Does it work? Yes. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much to join us today. I'm Flore Morton, the Assistant Director in Fashion Styling at the School of Fashion and Fashion Director of 180 Magazine. I've been teaching fashion design and styling for 12 years, and what is good design has always been on my mind when working with students. Is good design designing always for the same few, or is it to design many different groups, including people with disabilities? Is the fashion industry and other industries inclusive enough in the representation of their product in terms of race, body types, and disabilities in their advertisement, or is there still a long way to go? One box fits all is becoming less and less the answer, and has also become very limiting. To help us find some answers, we have with us today 3 exceptional individuals who have revolutionized the way we see disability or design. So first, we have Stephanie Thomas. Stephanie graduated online with a Master of Fashion Journalism in 2013 at the Academy of Art University. She wanted a place to go online that was all about dressing with disabilities. Since she couldn't find one, she created curvable.com. Guided by her personal experiences and a disability fashion styling system, she curates brands, footwear, and accessories. She also shares news you should know about adaptive fashion and geeks out weekly on all things related to dressing with disabilities on a podcast, Disability Fashion Styling. Stephanie not only shares a unique perspective on curable.com, she is also the go-to stylist in Hollywood for actors and influencers with disabilities. She hosts a podcast, Disability Fashion Styling, travels internationally as a keynote speaker, including for TED Talks, and consult fashion industry leaders. She also serves on a board of directors for No Limits Media and volunteers as a seminar leader for Dress for Success. Please welcome Stephanie with us today. Thank you. Beau Oyler. So Beau graduated in industrial design in 2005 at the Academy of Art University on the full scholarship. Having founded Unlisted Design and Urbio, he has created rich product and brand experiences for Fortune 500s and small startups. He pioneered the design cooperative movement and has a unique ability to truly collaborate with his partners. His designs have received every major design award, including Red Dot, Spark, Idea, and Good Design, the Die Line, Wired Editor's Choice, and Best of Show at Dwell on Design. He was on San Francisco Business Times magazine's 40 Under 40, Diablo's magazine's 40 Under 40 list, and earned a spot on the San Francisco Business Times fastest growing private companies in the SF Bay Area's list for 2 consecutive years. Beau led the Honey Can Do acquisition of Urbio, appeared on ABC's hit show Shark Tank, and has his company Enlisted named one of the best entrepreneurial companies in America by Entrepreneur magazine. Please welcome Beau Oyler with us today. Thank you. And Chelsea Werner. Chelsea, 25 years old, was born with Down syndrome. Because of a condition, the doctor said she would always have to have low muscle tone. Chelsea defied the odds stacked against her and got involved in gymnastics as a child. She went on to win the Special Olympic US National Championship in gymnastics 4 times. And she's a 2-time defending world champion. Chelsea is happy that it has given her an opportunity to inspire others to reach for their dreams. She is a strong believer in promoting inclusiveness in today's society. Most recently, she has broken into the fashion industry as a model. She worked at New York Fashion Week for FTL Moda in September, and worked at LA Fashion Week in October for Art Fashion. And she will be working in the Oakland Fashion Week in 2 weeks. All right, welcome Chelsea with me today. Thank you so much. So first I would like to ask a question to Stephanie. She's a big inspiration for me and for many people in the industry, and she has inspired to start this panel today. So first of all, Stephanie, can you define disability for us?
Well, first I just want to say that I'm really happy to be here, and Flore, I'm just really delighted to be here. When it comes to defining disability, it's a really wonderful, broad question, and I want to start by answering it from a macro perspective, which is people with disabilities, in my opinion, I agree with the advocate Katie Snow, who says people with disabilities are people first. I think oftentimes that is overlooked because sometimes we look at our differences and we think different and we forget all of our commonalities. I sit in front of you as a person, as was stated, I was born and I'm known as a congenital amputee. But if you see me on the street, you would have no way of knowing that. And so I wasn't supposed to walk. And they were wrong. I ambulate independently, but I also was born without a thumb. And I am even legally known as a person with a disability. I could never go to the military or anything like that. And so when you start to define disability, if you think of it on a macro level and think, oh, people with disabilities are actual people. And then to take it a little bit further, as you go in, there are always these conversations about how do you say disability? And those are legitimate conversations. That's nothing that you should feel ashamed of or feel like, am I being disrespectful? Is this politically correct? Just remember that people with disabilities are not monolith. Everyone defines themselves differently, and that's part of being an individual. That's part of being a person, the ability to self-identify. So that's how I would like to start that conversation.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. I have another question for you, because starting from defining disability, you have created this styling methodology to help your clients. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so I'm going to give you a really quick story. I have been following these clothing trends and retail trends for people with disabilities for 26 years. And the only reason I have a styling method is because in the early 90s, when I was watching, designers and writing them letters and trying to get designers to actually design for people with disabilities, people would write me back fly me out to their design houses and talk to their major designers, and then they would pat me on the head and never take my calls again. So don't ever deny or be sad about, people saying go away, because that's how I got my styling method. The part of my styling method that I share in my TEDx talk and that I usually talk about is my styling system, which basically says that clothing for people with disabilities should be 3 things. If you're shopping for or dressing someone with a disability, it should be accessible, easy to put on and take off. It should be smart, medically safe, and it should also be fashionable, good for someone's body type, their lifestyle, and something that they absolutely love. My styling method overall basically starts with the premise that people with disabilities are people first, and like people, we want choice. So I also think in terms of how do you shop with a disability? You should pre-plan, take water, know how long you can walk. When you are trying to decide on, is your closet accessible? If you know anyone that has ever lost a limb or a veteran that's come back, having a closet that's designed still for someone who stands and maybe now they have a seated body type, that can be really traumatic. So there are a lot of little elements of just thinking about what you would want as a person. When you take that and add that to dressing and styling, I think you really serve the need of the whole person. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. My next question is for Beau. I was very interested in your work because you designing and creating marketing strategy for so many clients. How do you integrate the different elements of disabilities into the design process?
So not every design process has a specific focus on disability. My focus as a designer is on consumer products and creating products that people are going to be proud of, and ultimately that people are going to have an emotional connection to, okay? And so a product has to be designed, and it can be designed in a way that feels intimidating. It can be designed in a way that feels friendly. It can be designed in a way that's easy to use, or it's very difficult to be used. It can be designed in a way that's very expensive and very inexpensive. And so when I start the design process, I first want to understand the consumer. Who's going to be using this product, and what are their specific needs? My disability, so I'm a severe hemophiliac, which is I have a bleeding disorder, and so my body the blood doesn't clot. So I can bleed internally and externally if I get injured. But you, like Stephanie, you wouldn't be able to see that. And that's okay. And so I think a lot of people are roaming this great earth with disabilities that we don't see. And so when I start the design process, I'll dive deep into really understanding who's going to use this product, how are they going to use it, and how can we design it in a way that it's going to be a delight for them to use.
Thank you very much. So talking a little bit about with you two earlier, I started to realize that maybe when you start designing, you need to think about the universal design. Stephanie brought that up, and you brought that up too, Beau. So maybe I can start to have the question for both of you, Stephanie and Beau. What do you think is a good universal design? Maybe let's start with you, Stephanie.
Well, actually, when I think of universal design, I think starting with disability at the beginning. Like, it's not something where you have to come back and say, okay, now how do we make this good for someone with a disability, someone with arthritis, a little woman? If you start already in mind with that, and you just say, okay, like you were saying, exactly how you were saying, what is the need of the person? And then how can we make this easy? I want to show you a really quick design. I wore these today. These are known as Hickeys. This is an Australian brand that started in 2009, and the brand didn't design this for disability at all. But if someone has arthritis or has tremors or have dexterity challenges, and they want to make their the shoes that tie, if they want to turn them into slide-ons, they can just buy these and snap these on, and now a shoe that was inaccessible is now accessible. So that's what I think of.
Would you repeat the question? I'm so fascinated with your shoelaces now.
What do you think, how would you define universal design?
Universal design, yeah. So similar to what Stephanie said, universal design is designing for the masses, right? So often we want to design products for this one, if it's fashion, this one specific person, or this one specific style, or this one specific market. And instead of looking at that, even though we do need to understand the market, we need to understand the core consumer, how do we design these products in such a way that are going to be delightful for many people, right? And so it's very inclusive of all who are going to use this product or all who could use this product. Now, of course, you have to balance that with the specific needs of what that product is going to do in the market. And sometimes what happens is that the product goes all the way over to the other side, where it's so easy to use or it's so accessible to everybody that it's no longer desirable, right? Exactly, it's no longer desirable. You look at it and you go, oh, well, I'm glad that they did that, but now that's not for me. And so who are you serving and how do you serve them?
Interesting. So my next question is for you, Chelsea, and for the mom of Chelsea, Lisa Werner, who is helping a daughter tour around and who has been managing quite well the career of a daughter. So my first question is, how did Chelsea got exposed to the fashion industry? What was the first modeling experience for her?
Well, the first modeling opportunity came up. Chelsea was on the Today Show. It had to do with her gymnastics. And a company had seen her on the Today Show, and they contacted us, and it turned out to be H&M. And they wanted to know if Chelsea would want to do a campaign for them, and we said, of course. So they flew Chelsea and I to Havana, Cuba for a week. She filmed an international campaign for H&M. And it was a campaign that had to do with athletes who had overcome disabilities. And so as soon as we got back from Cuba, somebody from the fashion world invited Chelsea to walk New York Fashion Week. So that followed quite quickly after that.
Fantastic. So you were telling me that following this experience, you toured a few model agencies in San Francisco and New York to see if it could become something that Chelsea could do. What was your experience touring the different model agencies, and what kind of feedback did you receive?
Well, when things happened so quickly, when we weren't even actually looking to enter the modeling world, I thought this is going to be great. This is going to be easy. This is going to be the perfect transition for Chelsea. So we went to modeling agencies in San Francisco. We went to some in LA. And basically all of them told us that there is not a market for models with disabilities.
Shocking. So I'm exposed a lot, to working with the model agencies in general. I'm the director of styling. And I think it's really fascinating to have both of you here today, because you're the perfect example to show that there's not one size fits all. And I think the model agency, like a little bit of diversity of race, of body type, and also more be inclusive, with people with disabilities. So I think it's quite fascinating to hear the story. Are you represented by an agency now?
Do you have a modeling agency, Chelsea?
Oh, yeah.
And where is it at? Where is it located? New York?
No, you like.
So somebody had seen Chelsea on a Facebook post that went viral with 20 million views and reached out at an agency in New York that represents models of diversity that represent positive lifestyles. So we've been with them for maybe like 6 months, and they're finding some good opportunities for Chelsea. And just like in her gymnastics, when Chelsea, all along, people have always told us that Chelsea would never be a good gymnast. And it really just took finding one coach that believed in her. That one coach took her to be a world champion, where I don't know how many coaches before that said she'll never be a good gymnast. And I think it's kind of true in the fashion world too, that I think it just takes one good opportunity or one good agency to believe. And so I think as a parent, that's kind of something you always have to take to heart. It's like you're going to get a lot of no's, and you just have to keep going and find an opportunity and find a group that embraces your child and their dreams.
Stephanie, you also have been working on trying to bring awareness to people with disability in the fashion industry and beyond. What do you think is the evolution in the fashion industry and the perception of people with disability? Do you see some evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. And social media. I could put a period there, but I'll go on. Social media is actually the game changer. Remember where I started with people with disabilities being people first? When you can go onto Instagram or Facebook and you can see someone that's an amputee lifting themselves. Have you seen those images of people at the gym lifting themselves with their wheelchair? What is that? Like they're in their wheelchair and they're doing their lifts and their upper body is amazing. So yes, it's a transformation, and social media makes a huge difference in normalizing and humanizing people with disabilities. And I think even the fact that I'm saying disability, someone is cringing every time I say it. Someone is thinking she should say special needs or all abilities. And that's one of the problems. One of the problems is that I'll use myself as an example. As an African-American woman, I get to say I'm a black woman. I get to say I'm African-American. I get to say I'm Stephanie. You know what I mean? So I think, yes, social media is putting a human face on what it means to be a person with disability. And as that relates to the fashion industry, it's transforming it because brands are now looking for micro-influencers. Have you guys heard that trend within the last 2 to 3 years? Micro-influencers are way more attractive because they have kind of unique, dedicated segments of populations that are really following them, and people with disabilities are falling into those categories. And you may not know this, but when it comes to employment of actors and influencers with disabilities, they're on the bottom of that whole equal pay, equal work. I work with one particular actress, Katie Sullivan. She's a medal-winning Paralympian. She has just been nominated for 3 of the 5 theater awards, right? She's been on the cover of the New York Times. She's been in Forbes. She would be considered a celebrity if she didn't have a disability. But as a person with a disability, she's an actor with a disability. She's being nominated right now. We're dressing her for an award show in the same category as Denzel Washington. I would say that is, even if it's a D or C list celebrity, I would say that her getting that title would increase opportunities for her to dress and be on the red carpet. So to circle back around to the question, yes, things are changing right now, and with regards to the fashion industry, social media is that engine that's pushing the conversation forward.
That's great. My next question would be not really from me, but from a student in styling to you, Stephanie.
Okay.
So it is a student who is online. Find the question. Here we go. So Chanel Davis is an online styling student, and she has spinal muscular atrophy. And when I heard about Chanel, it was just a few days ago. Right before this panel started. So I reached out to her and I said, that would be fantastic to tell me if you have any question for Stephanie and for the panel. And she had some questions for you.
Okay. Hi, Shannon. You're watching?
Yes. The 2 questions that she had is, I would like to know what are some challenges she's faced becoming a stylist with a disability, and if she has any advice for me.
Okay, so as a stylist with a disability and a background in television and radio, I didn't start out in fashion, so I do get a lot of shade, using a colloquialism. A lot of people throw shade on me because I don't have all of these great relationships with showrooms and marketing, PR, and all of that, which most stylists have. That's what gives the stylist the power to dress A-listers. Since I've been approaching styling from a personal styling perspective, I don't have all of that. So that would be my number one challenge, because then when it's time to dress my clients, I have to do more studio pulls, which means I have to connect with brands and go into stores and actually do a studio or a movie studio pull. I don't have that same flexibility or the power that another stylist would yield to pull clothing from New York Fashion Week runway or Paris runway. So that is one challenge, a definite challenge that I have. And what was the other question?
She also wanted to ask you, I would also love to know what changes she thinks needs to happen in fashion for people with disabilities.
I think I have to keep going back to the beginning. And when I say seeing people with disabilities as people, I keep really honing that, because I don't think that it's that people purposely in the fashion industry are ignoring. Tommy Hilfiger recently stated that the democratization of fashion, thanks to bloggers and vloggers, are really changing the way that people view fashion. So I think in the fashion industry, this is considered a bubbling up trend. And anyone that gets involved with this, so Shannon, or anyone that's interested in getting involved with this, has anyone ever run before, like sprint or, you know, cross country? This is definitely a cross country event. This is not something that you're going to get in and you're going to sprint and it's going to happen. You have to really have patience and perseverance, and you have to have conviction in what you believe. So I think the fashion industry is just now realizing that people with disabilities are fashion customers. If I can share one statistic from the U.S. Census Bureau and the World Health Organization on Disability, you may not know this, but 1 in 5 people have a disability, not just in the States, but in the world. And when you think of the United States, it's over 57 million people with a disability that anyone can join this group of people with a disability at any moment. You could be at the gym, you could walk off the curb, it could be a skiing accident. And in addition to that, people with disabilities, our families and our friends have a combined aggregate income of over $1 trillion. So as the fashion industry start to recognize that, brands like Tommy Hilfiger, I've seen that Burberry has recently dressed a very famous advocate and academic for Davos, the World Economic Forum. They dressed her for that entire event. And I think brands are recognizing, wait, this is good for our social return on investment, and this is good for our bottom line. So I think that's what's really going to move the conversation forward.
Thank you, Stephanie. So my next question is for Beau. As an industrial designer, moving away from universal design, for each particular disability, or maybe you can list us a few, you know, like let's say blindness and people who maybe do not have the use of their hands. How would you adapt a design to that? What's your thought process in this case?
Yeah, so just to clarify, industrial design is the design of physical products, right? And so a couple of the things that have radically changed our ability to design for more people, especially people with disabilities, is customization. So we design products that generally go into mass production, which means anything from 10,000 to 100,000 units are made of this one product. And in the past, in order to cut a tool and manufacture a plastic piece or a metal piece, you know, it is a huge capital investment. And so we would always design products that have symmetry, so that can be used by left-hand and right-handed users. But the beauty of manufacturing and the changes that are happening is that there's a lot of customization happening, right? So we can design the general form factor of a product and then have certain parts that are customizable. And those are customizable to your fashion, those are customizable to your body type, those are customizable to your ability, and it's really been able to allow for production to go from mass production to small production, right? And to be able to create 3D print production, where it can be highly customized to your exact need. So if you don't have hands, or you don't have fingers, or you don't have something that you need some other way of holding or gripping or using the product, we're able to design an element of the product that then can be produced through 3D printing that allows, you know, a perfect fit. And that's a game changer. So you think about prosthetics, right? If I were to lose my left leg in a cycling crash, they would be able to scan my right leg, mirror it, and reproduce my right leg as a left leg, and 3D print and manufacture my exact leg. That's pretty amazing, right?
Yes.
Like, for those of us who grew up in the 80s, that's the bionic man, and we're doing it now. And so I think that there's a mix between design, industrial design, engineering, and custom manufacturing that is going to change the way that we look at products and the way that we're able to customize a product for one person's specific need. Now, that's an extreme example. A more common example would be a product that we're designing now, which is for severe asthmatics, in which they breathe into the product, they hold the product, they breathe into it every day, and it gives them an exact readout of the severity of their asthma in that moment. And so as we were creating the form factor of this product, we're thinking about how is somebody going to hold it? Are they able to hold it? The core consumer is 4 years old to 90 years old. That's the core consumer. Like, who's on the fringe? Like, it's for everybody, right? And so a 4-year-old needs to be able to hold this product as well as a 90-year-old needs to be able to hold the product. Likewise, how do we indicate to this consumer, to this person, that they're using the product correctly? Well, we use light. What if they're deaf? Okay, so then we use sound. Okay, but what if they're blind? Or sorry, if they're deaf, we use light, right? And if they're blind, we use sound. And so then what about the rest of us? Do I want this, when I don't have those needs, to be blaring out, you know, loud sounds or lights all over the place? No, I don't. And so what we do is we cast a wide net and say, okay, who are the users that are going to be using this product, and how do we design for all of them, and then pare that down and give them the ability to customize the product to their specific need, so that the person who is blind can hear it, and the person who can't hear can see it, and then the rest of us who need just one or the other or none are able to turn those features off. And that's the kind of customization that's happening now.
I think it's very interesting because I think we have some design students watching us and in the audience, and really I don't think that people want to exclude, you know, in the design the process of making it easy for everyone to use, you know. But I think this element of starting with universal design and then customizing for people that can pull on and off, you know, I think it's very interesting, you know, so thank you for that.
One thing to add to that is the third element is the emotional element, and that's the empathy that comes in. And that's where, you know, we all have our things. 1 in 5 people have a disability, right? All of us on stage have disabilities, right? And so you think when we're embarking on a design program, or to create a product or a piece of garment or whatever it is, like having that empathy to say, okay, if I were this person, what would I need? And then be able to extract that emotion, define what's needed, and then be able to create that physical manifestation that solves that need.
Thank you, Beau. And my next question is for Stephanie, actually, and it's for the exact, the continuity of this question.
Okay.
What are the exact examples when in adaptive design in fashion are the elements that make it easier for people to put on and off? What are the key design elements that need to be added for people with disability to be able to use the garment more easily?
Okay. So the first thing I will say is, let's start with someone with a seated body type. Since you're all seated right now, I think you can relate to this. Can you all do me a favor if you're able to stand? Can you stand on your own right now? Just stand up for me in the audience. Thank you so much for helping out with this. Okay, now you can have a seat. Now, did anyone adjust their clothing in any way? Okay, so let's start there. So someone with a seated body type, you need to have the pants higher in the back and lower in the front, because if a person, have you ever seen someone in a wheelchair and they're a little exposed in the back? It's because their clothing is made for people that stand, just like when you just stood up. Someone who has a seated body type also needs, you see where my pockets are? This doesn't work when you're sitting all the time, because what if I have challenges and I have a spinal cord injury and I'm not able to get in? You want to make sure their pockets are in really cool places, like on the seams down here or on the top of the pocket. You want to be creative with that. Someone that has a seated body type, unless they're going for this length, you want to make it a little bit longer so that, because the pants are going to naturally do what? They're going to rise. Also, you're going to want to get rid of all of the rivets and the pockets on the back of the pants or the skirts, because that can actually cause or irritate body sores. And do you guys, have you ever heard of a body sore? I want to make sure I'm not saying something that you're not familiar with. So if you have a loved one that's ever been in the hospital and they're laying on the bed all the time, your body rubs, and that creates what's known as a body sore. So someone that has fabrics that's rubbing against their body when they're seated all the time, like when we get up and we sit down, we don't have that issue. But if someone's seated all the time, their fabric and different things like that can rub and cause seizures and cause different problems. People can literally die from that, and that's something that is not being thought of. I want to speak also quickly about a little woman. I work with a wonderful little woman. Her name is Drew Presta, and Drew is a little woman who's 21 years old. So she's really cute, has a lot of attitude. She's actually started filming with Little Women of LA. She's just a gorgeous woman. She's vibrant, and Drew doesn't want butterflies on her shoes. But since she's a little woman, people are like, oh, just go to the girls department and purchase her shoes. Well, that's not doable for a 21-year-old that wants to go out and enjoy her life and date. So having clothing for little women that's going to not only meet the needs of their body type, but making sure that it respects their age and their lifestyle. Another one that we always talk about wheelchair users, but even someone with arthritis. It's difficult, like for me, I have one thumb. It's annoying to be able to fast, so I never fast. I just never do it. But I like it now, but oftentimes I just buy things that don't have a lot of buttons that are this small. And so someone with arthritis, they're going to need a magnetic closure or some type of closure. I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of what this is like.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Tommy Hilfiger has started a line. It's called Tommy Adaptive, I believe.
Tommy Adaptive, yes.
Yeah, and if you're a design student, I think it's a very interesting collection because it's more sportswear and casual, but I think it has a lot of design elements that you guys can look at that are very adaptive for.
Yeah, there are a lot more that I didn't mention here.
Yeah.
But Tommy Adaptive, and they have for adults and children.
Yeah. So my next question is for Lisa and Chelsea again. So how would you like things to change in the fashion industry to be more open in general to people with Down syndrome? What are your hopes, and do you see things changing a little bit? And maybe my question is more for you, Lisa, because I think you're the one that are dealing with many older people in the fashion industry through all the contract that she had.
It seems like it is happening more and more where they are embracing diversity, but what I see, especially with individuals with Down syndrome, it's more in the little kids. And I think it's a little bit hard for Chelsea because Chelsea is so petite. She's 25 years old, but like you were mentioning, she wants to dress age appropriately, and a lot of like for instance, she wears size 2 shoes. So we've actually, for her to be on the runway, we had to have some shoes made custom for her because she needed a heel, and you can't find that in a child's size. So it's happening slowly. It just seems like the more that designers are willing to take a little bit of a chance, I think that the public really wants to see a lot more diversity in the fashion industry, and I think that once they see how the public responds to that, I think it's just going to happen more and more. So I think the ball is rolling, and I think it's going to take time.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes.
Can I comment on that? And it's really a call to action to designers, because every one of those products that you don't want to be wearing was designed by someone. A really bad designer. And it frustrates me, because a lot of effort had to go into creating products that people don't want to wear and ultimately don't want to use, but it may be the only option out there. So please, as designers, can we please look and accept and take on projects like this that may not be the sexiest projects. Maybe it's a low-run project. Maybe it's not going to be worn by the A-lister. But that's okay. These are meaningful products for meaningful individuals, and they'll make meaningful changes in their lives. And so as designers, I think part of our responsibility is to seek out and to accept design opportunities to design these types of products.
And that's what a good design is somehow. And I think the Academy is organizing this panel, and I think it's very powerful for you guys to come, first of all, and to really think when you integrate in your design something that is not just for 5'11", size 0 woman. It's kind of a standard in the industry, even when you are going to New York Fashion Week. All the sample size, we discussed that with Lisa, are size 0, and you need to be so tall. There's very few people who are made like that naturally, or that are even grow older as women, fully formed, with this type of body. So I think it's also a responsibility for the designers in general to not necessarily make the sample size exactly for what they say that fit the New York models, but on the other hand, the New York models, most of them can't fit in them anyway, So it's something else that maybe is the next step in the fashion industry to change as well. So we talked a lot, but we have a lot of people in the audience. So I also want to open this panel for discussion and questions from you guys. Would you have any questions to our guest today? And you have a microphone right on the middle right here. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, guys. I'm Mariana. I'm a fashion design student here. Thanks for coming and sharing all your stories. I have a brief question kind of for each of you. First one's for Chelsea. Your kind of positive experiences with fashion, kind of since you've been starting with the agency. Who are some of the designers that you've gotten to work with?
Well, she worked with H&M, and she just did, I'm trying to think of the name. She got invited to go to LA a few weeks ago, and they have a whole diversity, it's called XR Diversity. Mm-hmm. And they're coming out with a whole line that is going to be geared towards models of all shapes and sizes. And so that's up and coming. They're kind of taking a big risk with the whole clothing line geared towards just showcasing people with disabilities. So that's what I'm trying to think what else have you done? She's done something with Macy's. I'm trying to think, anything else that you've done? And a few designers on the runway as well.
Wow. That's really exciting, thank you. Stephanie, I was gonna ask you, when you're styling actors and for kind of dressing down the runway, red carpet and so on, do you see like a lack of designers or a lack of designs for the people you're dressing? Do you think there's a need for more fashion designers?
Yes, there's a need for more fashion designers. If anyone will please design evening gowns that don't zip in the back. Also, we need wedding dresses for seated body types and little women and women that use braces so that they can kind of get in them independently, and tuxedos and shirts for men who are wheelchair users. They need larger necks. So yes, yes, and yes, we need more designers, and a lot of designers are just, quite frankly, just afraid of it. I don't think it's personal. I just think they just don't understand it. So yes, to answer your question.
And aside from the fear, do you think there's something in the industry that's kind of keeping designers from going there?
Yeah, I think it's the way that it's set up. I think now that we've moved more towards the see now, buy now, there are going to be greater opportunities because now people are going to they're putting things on the runway that they want people to buy. And that is a great opportunity for people with disabilities to be included, not as props in a fashion show now, but as actual fashion customers. So really looking at people with disabilities as fashion customers. So this new trend that I believe Burberry, Tommy Hilfiger a few years ago started doing this, that creates a lot of opportunities to change the game.
And Beau, my question for you is, as a designer, you know, when you're tackling a project, do you kind of think about how you might want to make a product be really like visibly about disability and kind of like being loud and kind of like being free and really kind of putting it out there as a part of like the design element so that if someone doesn't have a disability can also use it and kind of like be, you know, like supportive of it? Or do you kind of think, you know, how do I make this product be really like kind of normalized, like, you know, not be a really obvious thing, you know, how do I make this specific product like seamless and camouflaged?
Because of the types of products that I design, they're all for mass use and mass production. They need to be, they need to have mass usability. And so it's more the latter, right? We design a product that somebody's going to see and want, right? And so that they enact that exchange of $100 for this product or whatever it is. And so that barrier of entry requires that we design a product that lots of people are going to enjoy and be able to use. And so fortunately or unfortunately, that really, the consumerism leads that decision, right? Rather than designing a product that's overtly for some, you know, for special needs or for somebody who has a special physical need. However, there are certain products that we are able to do that, and then of course we're able to celebrate that a little bit more.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Any other question? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Richard Kenwright. I am a styling major at the Academy. And my question is for you, Stephanie. Essentially, what was your solidifying moment? You know, this is the moment that I really want to start styling for people with disabilities. Was it in the 90s that you were talking about? I'm just really
It actually happened in 2007. I went to holiday shopping. I saw a coat for a dog that had buttons that were functional and pockets. I don't know any dogs that use pockets, although I love the clothes. And I decided at that moment, wow, if I were a pet parent, which I was at the time, I could literally bring my pet in this store and get customized clothing for my pet, but not for a person who has a seated body type if I had a child that was a wheelchair user. That was the transformative moment for me. I was working in radio, and I actually packed away my clothing for an entire year and became what was known as, I coined myself the PJ DJ, and I traveled regionally talking about the need for clothing for people with disabilities. And that's actually, shortly after that, I enrolled at the Academy of Art to learn everything I could about fashion. I was actually in a PhD program, and I said, you know what? Actually, my professors told me to leave. They were like, go learn everything you can about fashion, and that's how I came here, and that was the moment for me.
Nice. I bet that too, like being a part of, you know, the news and the radio, that really helped get good exposure for you. So.
Yeah, it gave me a really strong platform.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
That was a great question. Thank you, guys. Both of the questions so far were really great.
Thank you, Richard. Any other question, guys? No? Well, I would like to say something before we conclude the panel. For the fashion designers in general, I spend a lot of time with the designers, and they work with all these wonderful concepts. But, you know, there's been a lot of mod dresses. I don't know how many more times we can redesign it, you know? And, and somehow I've been a little bit tired with not the fashion industry, but just women's wear design, seeing the same thing over and over again. And when I saw what Stephanie was doing, I thought, that's what's new. It's that we don't look at everyone when we design. And maybe the newness is not having a new hem on the bottom of the dress, but who we're designing for. And so I thought that was very powerful, your message. All right. Thank you very much to come today. Thank you so much for your panel. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Beau. Thank you so much, and you guys have a wonderful day.